If you grew up in America, most of the people got a lot of the same basic training when it came down to history, when it came down to religion, the church. We got sort of the same information when it came down to civics. Now, that isn't to say that we were fair or just, but we did relate to the same subject matters. Perhaps the information might have been a little different as we received it, but it did exist. And one of those things that we got when it came down to the spiritual side, when it came down to the church, is that it had something to do with conduct. People talk about ways that were acceptable, being friendly, kind, and nice, and wonderful toward people, and having sympathy, empathy, and etc. And we talked about things that were not so impressive, things that we would just want to stay away from, did not give a good picture of who you are, who the society was that you came from, that permitted you to continue there or to create a situation that allowed that to exist at all. And so, you got things constantly dealing with whatever exists. And you might ask yourself, how are we going to deal with this stuff? Because that seems to be representative of, well, a name we gave it, we say that was representative of evil, that was representative of Satan, that was representative of the devil. And so we would we would tell ourselves, and it would be suggested as part of our teaching, to stay away from such. And wherever you saw somebody, committing these acts, we said they were just committing acts of evil. And in the government or in the system, we might say they're breaking the law. But it's sometimes, and most times, if it violated the law, any good law, it also violated the spiritual. So these were, the limits that we as people were dealing with. And then someone comes along representing just those things that we have labeled as stay away from, that we call evil, and run for president of the United States of America. Now, how can a person like that become president of the United States of America? Either the people got to be, asleep, they got to be definitely asleep. Because if they were woke, they can see that. But asleep people, nah, they can't see anything. They just snoring. And so the next thing you know, to make a long story short, this guy was a candidate for president of the United States. And you had, even though this reputation preceded this guy, you had church members, you had the richest pastors, the richest churches, the mega churches, you had the Paula Whites and the Kenneth Copelands, and you just had many other televangelists and mega church people just standing up, laying hands on Trump, laying hands on what we really say symbolizes evil, symbolizes the devil, symbolizes Satan sitting up there running for president, and these preachers and stuff, what people already call fake preachers because of what they're doing with the word, what they're doing with the church, and to abuse the people and not really serving anybody but themselves. But that they're lying hands, that God is going to bless this man. Well, he got in office once. People realized that what was said about him was actually true, and they didn't want to have anything to do with it. But he came out trying to steal the election, just being constant with his personality, with his character. Tried to steal the election. When that wouldn't work, then he tried to take over the government, just overthrow it. And still, as much evil, as much devil, as much satanicness that he was able to display, he was still able to become president of the United States again. What does that say about America? You can say what you want to say about Trump. You can call him the biggest devil in America. You can call Trump the biggest devil America has ever produced. But I guarantee you one thing. He's no bigger devil than his parents. And who are his parents? I'm not just talking about that man up there who was giving him the check. I'm talking about America, the American people. The American people, what America stood for, the American system is responsible for Donald Trump. To get him here and all of the rides, the free rides he's had since he's been in this position of power. They brought him here, they put him in this position of power, they've given him all these free rides to abuse the people of America. All to abuse the people of America. Anybody, everybody knows that anybody else that comes through that door and stuff would have been kicked out of power, killed. But this is what America got. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm just your brother. But like your parent, I worry about you. And so I have to tell you the truth. This America we got is exactly the America we deserve. Well, what does that say? That basically says that the citizens, they've taken over government, empowered what we call evil, empowered the devil, empowered Satan, empowered those that pursue pain and suffering on the masses while they strip and rob them for themselves. That's what we call demonic. So the citizens are going to have to rise up and let all that kind of stuff, the power behind that, know that it is not acceptable. But ladies and gentlemen, as you know that you're going to have to rise up, as you know you're going to have to do something, you also must know that if you want to be successful in anything you pursue, you're going to have to advocate for real change, not going back to where we were, not going back to what we had, the status quo, what we call normal. Well, let's go back to the way things were normal. Well, got an idea what things going to be like. No, baby. That's like a parent that what? Negligent in the responsibilities, even before birth and after birth. No, you're going to have to be well together. The problem is that people got problems. The problem is that no one seems to know how to solve the problem. Nobody even want to focus on solving the problem. They just look at one problem and see another problem is easier. Seems like might be more acceptable. We'll maybe transfer these problems. Just borrowing from the basket of problems. When you're asleep, all that kind of stuff can cross you. But when you wake up, you can see. And what you see, you know what you like and you know what you don't like. And if you judge what you like by how it affects you, and you're smart and wise enough to know that if you want the best for yourself, you got to turn around and how to protect that. And that's protecting it for everyone else. That means don't do anything to shake it. Don't do anything to knock it. Don't do anything to rock it. If you do anything, do to assure that Harry, Dick, and Sue, and Jamie, and Rebecca can jump up and shout, just like you. Why? Because it's a brand day. Why? Because they got something to do. They got something that they love doing. They got something that gives them their greatest joy. And what they do participates with everything else that everyone else is doing. Collectively, it creates heaven. And it eliminates you. Never have anything to do with lying, cheating, stealing, that hatred and race. That stuff never exists. Why? Because we've learned, the ones that's woke. Now, if you woke, you got to walk that way because that's the way woke is. Irregardless of who's on the throne. If Satan is on the throne, you go shine. Because Satan gonna be trying to make sure everybody lose their job. Satan gonna be trying to make sure that people lose their safety net, that old folks don't have Social Security and that they don't have Medicare. Look, but that ain't what love, that's not what woke people do. Woke people think about the sun shining bright. Woke people thinking about life, and you're experiencing it every day. You're receiving the joy, the great joy. You know what you heard this expression say, this joy I have, the world didn't give it to me, and the world can't take it away. You are tapped into truth. You're tapped into truth. And regardless of what they do, regardless of what they try to maintain, you don't have to fuss with them. You definitely don't have to fight them like that. Not a physical fight. No, this is a spiritual fight. I tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, you stand up for what's right. Just be wonderful and stand up for what's right. See, when you stand up for what's right, this is what you're doing. First of all, you're honoring the power that you can't see. When you stand up for what's right, you're honoring the power that made this earth possible. When you stand up for what you can't, the power you can't see, you're honoring that power for giving the resources that allows you to be able to do other things that you do. When you honor that power that you can't see, you're thanking that power for your own, yourself. You're thanking that power for giving you the ability to choose how you live. Will it be fantastically wonderful or will it be pure hell? Then you choose fantastically wonderful. And then you do those things that allow it to be fantastically wonderful. So this is a choice that you probably never hear about. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to hear that and I want you to hear it clear. But this is not something about tomorrow. This is nothing about something to come. This is something that we, the people, rise up and do. And when we shine like this, it's like, you ever seen a sports team that's never been that successful and all of a sudden it's successful and you just get behind it and you shout? You remember when the Washington Redskins were playing something, Elway, and they had Doug Williams quarterbacking, and Doug Williams fooled around and got hurt, and he thought they could put him out of the game. And they took him out for a second, then let him back in. Doug Williams went crazy. And the people went crazy, especially black folks. A quarterback, a black quarterback, whooping tail. Man, oh man, oh man. So you know what I'm talking about. You know what it's like now. Look at when the Chicago Bears seemed like they could never do anything. Then I moved from Chicago. And then Chicago and Walter Payton boys started kicking tail. Woo! Now look like I'm gonna have to move from Minnesota. So the Vikings start kicking tail. Anyway, what I'm trying to say to you, ladies and gentlemen, the power of enjoying life is always in our hand. Sure, the threat comes at us and it puts a lot of fear in us when we are asleep. When we wake up, that's no fear. That's ignorance. That's dumbness. That's a call for you to stand up and wake them up. Pow, 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 pow. Wake up. What do you mean by wake up? Letting rich people know that they are no more important than you are. They are no more important than any of the citizens on this earth. Every citizen desire to have their need, wants, and the needs, wants, and desires met. And so do people who are rich. That's what you deserve. Peace, prosperity, freedom, joy, and happiness. That's what you deserve. Never have to worry about food, clothing, shelter. That's what you deserve. Riding high, talking about a system that allows you to stand all above people and try to direct the path that people have to go through in life, and you always out there offering, suffering because you're trying to get more money. That stuff, you can take that on back to hell with the devil. Take it on back to hell with Satan. And take that on back to hell with ignorance. And it's not acceptable as we go high. Okay? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.